Welcome to this World Satsanga, transmitted in conjunction with the Morph Show on the 20th of August 2016. And this is the second World Satsanga, which is the second pre-recorded World Satsanga, which is being transmitted as part of a joint venture with Kevin Moore of the Morph Show. And I spoke to Kevin recently about the first transmission, and he apologises for its late delivery onto his website, but he's actually moving. He's moving out of the UK and positioning himself in Holland somewhere. So he apologises for that and says he'll be on the case fairly soon. So let me just look at the agenda for this particular satsanga. And first part of it is recognising why we are slipping down the frequencies. And it's interesting that I've also felt the need to communicate with that, and the source also felt the need to communicate with that on my newsletter recently. And it seems to be something which is becoming more and more of an issue, certainly with people who are also feeling the difference between themselves now and how they felt a few months, even a few years ago. As the Earth is moving down the frequencies, and we are being affected by it, or should I say, we are moving down the frequencies, and the Earth is being affected by it. Okay, and then I've got a number of different questions done by some of the previous live interactions with the World Satsanga to do with various other different subjects. So I'll try and go through those as well. It's quite possible I haven't got time to do all of those particular questions. If that's the case, then I'll hold those in reserve for the next Satsanga, which will be in September. Okay. So the first thing is to look at really recognising, or firstly understanding why we're slipping down the frequencies, and that's from a personal perspective rather than from the Earth's perspective. And it has to be understood that we affect everything around us, and we affect everything associated with us. And so if we, so say, indulge in something, that level of indulgence does have an effect on us. It affects how we think, how we behave, and how we act. And so thinking of this in context with our slipping down the frequencies is very important, because we create our own slippage. It doesn't just happen to us. Somebody else doesn't make us slip, and the environment doesn't make us slip, although it can if you think about triangulation, which is what we've done in the past. But in essence, we create our own slippage, and we create our own slippage by simply being complacent about who and what we are, our level of spirituality, and where we think we've got to. And it's almost like thinking we've reached the pinnacle of who and what we can be, and therefore we don't need to do anything else. And when that happens, which happens an awful lot, by the way, with everybody, and that includes myself, and that because we do start to become complacent. We do think, we don't need to work on ourselves today, or we don't need to do meditation today, or we don't need to do any of the reversing the frequencies work today, or we don't need to meditate today, or we don't need to do yoga today, or Kriya yoga, or any of these different things. They all add towards slippage. The moment we start to move away from our standard structure of doing things that is spiritual, or just being a good individual, or just being of service, then we start to move down the frequencies. So the rot starts when we start to skip meditation times, prefer to work on something that's in the material world first, in lieu of doing our meditations, doing our own personal work. And so we start to chisel away at that structure, replacing that structure, that's its spiritual structure, with something that is material world structure. We start to become more interested in having to do jobs, having to mow the lawn, for instance, having to take the car to get fuel, having to do work from work, if we bring work home, for instance. We start to supplement the time that we had doing our spiritual work, which is extremely important and is necessary, because if we don't continue it, we do drop down with stuff which is low frequency. So it's to start to very slowly swap out our high frequency work with low frequency work, and that makes us come down the frequencies. Now then, what happens as well is that we feel good about it, and the ego. Now we all know about the ego, and I might do a World Satsanga probably in September just to go over what the ego is again, because the ego is a very important thing to understand. It's not being sort of what we call egotistical in the material world sense. The ego is, in effect, that personality that's created as a result of us being incarnate. It's a result of the sentient energy, our soul, being placed in an almost total condition of being separated from its greater body of sentience, the true energetic self, which we sometimes call the Godhead or the Oversoul or the higher self. And it knows that when it's in this condition of, shall I say, loss of low frequency, that it's going to demise early. It wants to keep itself living. It wants to keep itself in the forefront of who and what we are. But it also knows that as soon as the human body dies, the human vehicle dies, it can't survive. So it knows it's on limited time anyway. And that's why we fear death, because the ego takes control of us. It fears our demise. It fears the demise of the human body. It makes us think we are the human body. And so when we start to move up the frequencies, it fears this, and it does everything in its path to stop us from progressing in our spiritual advancement. So when we start to dip into low frequency things, like having little breaks from our spiritual work, or supplementing that work with other material world work or low frequency work. I mean, some of this stuff is necessary anyway. We have to make sure that we do look after and maintain our responsibilities here. This is one of the reasons why we're here. But it's also a case of we need to make sure that we have a priority involved. And the priority is to keep ourselves afloat. And I'm going to use the word afloat here a couple of times because it's similar to staying high frequency. If you think of the air as being high frequency, as the water being low frequency, to enable to keep our head above water, i.e. our head in the higher frequency, we need to tread water, or we need to swim. Now, if we don't swim or we don't tread water, we sink. So the only way to stay in the higher frequency of the air and be able to breathe and see what's beyond the water, what the environment that is in the air, and the land, etc., we need to continue to swim or tread water, or find some other vehicle to stay above water. If we don't, then we drop down and we basically remove a lot of our own sensory perception that's associated with being in the air versus being in the water. But also we start to, obviously the human body demises as a result of that, so it dies early. So from our perspective, if we think of the lower frequency being the water and the higher frequency being the air, if we're not working on ourselves all of the time, then we do slip down. So what we have to do is to make sure that we don't slip down, and the way to recognise it is to be very vigilant, because the more we slip down, the more we accept slipping down. And the more we accept slipping down, the more we think it's okay to do so. The more we think it's okay to do so, the more we feel happy about it. The more we feel comfortable about it. I'm a spiritual being. I'm okay. I'm very advanced. But actually, you're slipping down. And so we have to be careful, because the ego gives us this feeling of being okay and being all right and being good, even though we're slipping. It's a little bit like slowly falling asleep and not recognising that you're falling asleep until you've fallen asleep, so to speak. It's one of those very, very slow things that happens and catches us out on a regular basis without us even knowing it. So we have to keep looking at who and what we are. We have to keep observing ourselves. We have to make sure that we keep swimming. And the way to make sure we keep swimming is to use the tried and tested methods that we used when we first started to become very interested in spiritual existence. When we became very enthusiastic, we started to meditate, we started to go to workshops, we started to surround ourselves with like-minded people, we started to do various different yoga, for instance, or we started to meditate more and more and more. And we need to keep doing this. But on top of that, some of us may have also been party to certain types of self-analysis. So apart from going back to basics and rekindling that basic enthusiasm, we also need to be able to continue to observe ourselves all of the time. And that means that we are constantly checking who and what we are. We're checking our thoughts, we're checking our behaviours, we're checking our actions, we're checking everything all the time. And we have to do it in a very, not a negative sense, very neutral sense. We have to consider ourselves as being the observer of ourselves, but without being judgmental. We have to recognise when we are slipping down, when we are indulging in various different things, or when we are not doing our spiritual work, or we are reacting in the wrong way, or we are behaving in the wrong way, and stop ourselves from doing it and go back to where we were. For instance, understanding that somebody who pushes our buttons is just another spiritual being who is progressing, and that they are experiencing what they're supposed to be experiencing, and part of their work is with us, and they will be probably enlisted by us to help us move on with the various different karmic things. So we need to work with people who push our buttons to get them not push our buttons again. We need to not get drawn into gossip or negative thinking or negative behaviours, eating the wrong things, drinking the wrong things, smoking the wrong things. We need to sort of move away from these different things, and we have to continue to watch ourselves. So the observer self, this neutral, non-judgmental, caring and sharing and loving other part of us that's watching us all the time and says, actually, you didn't think that through. You should have waited and stopped before you answered that question. You should have waited and thought about how you could help that person that you just walked by, who desperately needed help, but you just walked by. How you didn't let that person in front of you in your car. We need to sort of look at these things on a regular basis. So using the observer self is the most important tool in recognising that we are slipping down the frequencies and nipping it in the bud early. It's the nipping it in the bud early which helps us to move forwards and stop our descent and increase our ascension. Now, this isn't easy, because once we have got to the point where we're experiencing being slow, for instance, or we're experiencing the body being lower frequencies, hurts. It's difficult. The body doesn't like being low frequency because it's used to being high frequency. We get ourselves into various different habits that we've previously kicked, or that we didn't think would be associated with, and so moving away from those habits and those thoughts and those behaviours and actions is very, very hard. Specifically when the ego is involved, because the ego will want to use those particular thoughts, behaviours and actions to perpetuate its own existence. So it will be doing all it can to make you feel really good about those low frequencies, thought, behaviours and actions. So moving away from a drop down is very, very difficult. And a lot of individuals don't make it back up again. They slip down and they stay down. And they make excuses for it. Oh, this didn't work for me. The person who was teaching me was rubbish. They obviously haven't understood what the subject matter is. And they'll use all the different excuses under the sun. So really, really, really stop what you're doing. Go back to the basics. The basics being the very basis for what started you along your spiritual path in the first place, and use the observer self to constantly record, think about and act upon variations from spiritual thoughts or higher frequency thoughts versus low frequency thoughts, high frequency behaviours versus low frequency behaviours, and high frequency actions versus low frequency actions. So really, really check yourself on a regular basis. It's very important, because not only does it affect you, it affects those around you, and it affects the earth as well. So as we go down, we affect others by going down the frequencies, and the earth, or the environment that we exist within, which we call the earth, or our local area will also go down as well. So back to basics, rekindle the old enthusiasm and use the observer self and act upon what you see in a within yourself within a non-judgmental way. And that's how to recognise we're slipping down the frequencies and how to act on it. Okay, so I've got a number of different questions here I'd like to go through, and we'll see how far we can get within the time allotted. Okay. Whilst I'm looking for these questions, I'll just remind you all this is being done in conjunction with Kevin Moore of The Moore Show, and he's going to be transmitted on his YouTube channel as well as his website as well. Okay. So the first set of questions here, and it's based upon the history of God work, and it describing the development of the human vehicles and therefore in the frequencies. And the comment is, would I please elaborate on how the higher or lighter, denser cloned forms, the hermaphrodites, and our other current form, the sexual duality, correlate to the root races of mankind described by Blavatsky, Steiner, and others? And what I'm looking at here is a list that's been given to me, and I thank the person knows who it is, and I thank you very much for sending this question. And it said, what is the frequency band level and the galactic origins, if known, of the root races of mankind? And there's 5 here. It's Polarian, Hyperborean, Lemurian, and the question there is, this is where the sex is split. Atlantean, which had 7 sub-races, brought emotion. The Aryan, which emerged about 100,000 years ago, brought intelligence, has 7 sub-races. And those 7 sub-races are the Hindu, Arabian, Persian, Celts, and Mycenaean Greeks as an offshoot, the Teutonics and the Slavs, and the Australo-American, which is developed during the 21st century through Western North America, New Zealand, and Australia, and will bring wisdom. So, my understanding is that all of these different root races of mankind are within what we would classify as the human vehicle now, in so much as we have a dualistic condition. We have a male and female, and the male and female must join together to reproduce to create another vehicle. So all of the races from Polarian, Hyperborean, Lemurian, Atlantean, etc., Aryan, and the subsequent Hindu, Arabian, Persian, Celts, Mycenaean, Teutonic and Slavs, and the Australasian and American versions are all part of this particular vehicle type. The other vehicle types are outside of what we would call known memory or historical references. It's too far away. It's a completely different civilization type. As I'm reading this email that gives us the information, I'm picking this up. It's very much a case of everything we know and that has been known and that has been channeled, that is relevant to what we are now in any way, shape or form, irrespective of and by the way, this is the duality side of it, not the cloned versions or the hermaphroditic versions, is based upon this particular dualistic condition. So anything from any of the channelers, Blavatsky, Steiner, myself included, any of the others who refer to the older races, all the information that they're getting is based upon higher frequential levels of this particular genre of human form, having male and female. Okay, so looking at Polarian though, clearly we were a higher frequency at that point, even though we're in a very similar body form or vehicle form. At that point we're much higher, and I'm being told the Polarian would have been around the 4th and 5th frequential level, and we've come down from the 4th stroke 5th. In fact, I'm being told midpoint between 4th and 5th, so if you want to call it the 4.5 frequential level, you can do. But I'm told the Polarian level, we started to come down, and we are where we are now. So it's only a sort of a frequency and a half in real terms, but it's a huge distance in frequential reality. Okay. So the sixth part of this question here, the root race of the mankind by talk about the Polarian, Hyperborean, Lemurian, Atlantean, Aryan, and the sub races of the Aryan are in essence 5 of the sub races. The sixth, root race is the 6th future root race is to arise when. So the question is, are these the indigo or the crystal children or the rainbow children or their hybrids, or is it now the white children? My understanding is that it's going to come with a change of era, change of age, and I'm very much being told that when we are fully in the age of Aquarius, or on the cusp of the changeover between where we are now in Aquarius, that's when the 6th root race will come in, and that'll be a higher frequency again. It'll be in the 4th frequency, so we'll have moved out of the 3rd and into the 4th. The 7th root race will be in the 5th, and the 5th frequency, and that's a long way away. I thought we were going to have frequential shifts that within the next 50 years, and I'm being told that we are. But those frequential shifts are nowhere near as big as is required to go from one frequential level to another. Think of it in terms of that there being frequencies or sub-frequencies within the frequencies. So we experience those sub-frequencies, and we're moving up those sub-frequencies as indices between the main frequencies. But moving from one main frequency to another main frequency, or one frequential level to another frequential level, is quite a difficult thing to do, and that takes a long time. And we will need to reverse our downward trend to initiate the start, and a robust start, of the accelerated ascension required to create the jump into the 4th frequential band to allow the 6th root race to come into it. And in terms of these children and the energy types associated with their physicality, it would be beyond the white children. I'm told the white children are here to point the way, basically. They are there's 12 of those, as I've talked about in previous Satsangas. 12 made up of 3 times 4. 4 of them will be in the background, a bit like Babaji. 4 of them will be quantitative teachers, and 4 of them will be qualitative teachers. So quantitative teachers will have just a few students who are good at what they're doing, and the quantitative teachers will have lots of students. And of course the 4 that are in the background will just be changing things in the background, so to speak. Okay, so that's going to be quite some distance away. Okay, so I think that's basically answered that particular set of questions. We've got one more, maybe 2 more. We'll see what the time's going. So the second question is, what is our superordinate goal while we're here on Earth? What are the tools and methods to achieve it? And having achieved that goal, what comes next? So the superordinate goal for me means it's the main goal. It's why we're here. We have it's the underlying reason for us to be here. If we think about our incarnation having a life plan associated with it, and we follow that life plan as closely as we can do, provided we have good guidance from our guides and helpers, then we have a number of different goals that we achieve all at the same time. But not all of those goals, of course, are important. They will be things we want to do, things we have to do, and things we could do, and things we should do, and things we might be able to do have we got the time. So, whilst I've been talking about that, and I've been sort of easing myself into that particular question, the thing I've been told is that the most important thing for us to do is to move up the frequencies. So, how do we do that? We remove our karmic links. Karma, as you all know, is a name that is used and is misunderstood. In general, though, my understanding is it is a way of linking us to low frequencies. It's a way of creating an addiction or a need or a desire to want to come back into this low frequency and keep coming back all the time. And wants to come back. In real terms, it's difficult being here. It's horrible being here. And it's a real shock to the system for us all to be here. But from that perspective, when we start to experience some of the things of associated being here, some of the sensations, some of the thoughts, some of the material wealth issues, some of the status points where we can coerce people, work with them, create empires, become very wealthy, very famous, all these different things. We can start to get addicted to how our body form is as well. Then it starts to become karmic. It starts to be a link to the lower frequencies. It starts to become a desire and then an addiction to come into the earth. So although we've got little addictions or little things we need to sort out in terms of how we've interacted with other different incarnate souls, so to speak, and to aim to react differently and in a more evolutionary efficient way, rather than getting tied up into all sorts of low frequency thought processes, behaviours and actions, then the opportunity for us to move forwards is based around removing that link. So those are basic things: removing that link, removing the addiction. And certainly in terms of how we respond to others, is a constantly constantly moving item, because if we move with somebody, if we interact with somebody else, and we don't interact with those individuals in the most efficient way possible, or evolutionary efficient way possible, we do start to slip down, and we have to come back and then reenact that particular incident or interaction with somebody, or interaction with a different environment that allows us to respond in the correct way. And that correct way is to react correctly without becoming attached to the reaction or the event. Okay, so that's something we come back to on a regular basis. But in total, the big goal we have is to be here and remove that need to be here, remove the desire to be here, remove the addiction of being here. And we know when we've done this, because we can be in this environment and nothing affects us. We don't get drawn into any gossip, we don't feel bad about this, we don't feel worried about that. We understand that material wealth or status means nothing. We understand that we can exist within this environment but not be part of the environment. And when we've got to that point of being in the lower frequencies but not of the lower frequencies, then we've achieved the level of not needing to incarnate again, not needing to come to this level, have a part of ourselves connect with a vehicle that allows us to experience the environment in the way it's supposed to be experienced, in the frequential level is supposed to be experienced, and evolve whilst in the higher frequencies instead. And so, linking everything together in a sort of roundabout way, the superordinate goal is to be able to come into an incarnate situation but not get drawn into it. To be in the physical but not be of the physical. And that results in a way in which we behave, the way in which we think, the way in which we act. We act in a detached way. Now, some people may think we're not engaging with them. If we start to become this goal, if we start to realise that we're not part of this environment, so we're not part of the nonsense that happens around us, we don't get drawn into gossip, we don't get drawn into angry thoughts, we don't get drawn into commenting about this, that and the other, then we start to realise that we're existing in the environment, but we're not of the environment. And that means that we'll have achieved our main goal. We'll have removed away all of our karmic links, all the things we need to sort out in terms of reacting to certain environments and certain levels of interaction with other types of individuals and various different personality types in various different scenarios, and we'll have wiped out any possibility of any other addictions through being here. So we'll have moved away from the need to incarnate. So that's the goal. The goal is to create the knowingness, not a belief system, but the knowingness that we are what we are, and that we've got responsibilities while we're here. We fulfill those responsibilities, but we don't get immersed in all those responsibilities. So we're of the physical, we're in the physical, but we're not of the physical. And that's basically the main goal of us while we're here on Earth. Okay, so I'm just checking the time again at the moment. So I've got 2 more questions here. In fact, I've got 3 questions here, and we'll see how we go. I might have to put the one question into next month. Okay. So the first question is basically following up from a previous Satsanga. The first question is this: when I just responded about backfill people, I said something to the effect they were lower quality souls that get addicted to lower quality states since they have never experienced free will. So I'm asked to elaborate on this aspect of free will being atypical for backfill people, and why that might be. Does the lack of having free will experience contribute to an inability to withstand addiction behaviours in the modern world? Backfill people, as I said before, are basically here to keep the balance of individuals on this particular frequential level, the 3rd level, whilst people are ascending to the 4th level. So that it allows people who are still working on the 3rd level to continue to work on the 3rd level without wondering about where everybody's going to, basically. So there has to be a level maintained. And the backfill people are basically other souls that are not the same quality as ours, but they're above the animal. So they are not used to having the exposure to having total free will. And although they're not common on Earth, they weren't common on Earth in the past, they start to become more and more common now as we do start to move up the frequencies, even though we're enjoying, if that's the right word, a slightly downward trend at the moment. So they are a different quality of sentience, is a better way of saying it. The animal souls have one level of sentience and we have a different level of sentience. The backfill people and the souls associated with them have a level of sentience, a quality of sentience that's in between the two. So this allows them to work in certain ways. It allows them to animate the human form, but in general, when they have been incarnate, they have been in a condition where they've been working in a collective function, rather than an individualised function that can work with the collective function if it wishes, or it can work in a completely selfish way for itself. So they normally operate when incarnate in this collective function. So everything that happens in various different states of collectivity. And I seem to remember in one of my books that there was a certain types of collectivity in the way it functioned, and I can't remember what they are now. But basically, this particular type of soul would have been in a position where it could operate in two collective ways. One way is where it's a little bit like the hive mind, where everything is a part of a bigger brain, so to speak. So every incarnated entity and every soul is part of a bigger soul, and can only act and respond as part of that bigger soul, or as a function, or a smaller component of the bigger soul. And they can also react, depending on what they're doing and what they've been assigned to. They can react in an individual way, but in concurrence with the bigger soul, or the collection of souls, provided that the collection of souls agree with the advice or the suggestion made by that individual. So when they're put in a position of complete free will, it's a bit strange for them. They've not experienced it before, and as a result, they start to in effect get addicted to this ability of being able to do anything and everything they want to. They will be not separated out from the ability to achieve what any of us can do. So then they are still able to become pop stars, still able to become actors, still able to become chief executive officers of banks and their own businesses. They're still still able to be of service. They can do everything we do, but they tend to get sucked into the sensation side of things, the materialistic aspect of things, the lower frequency thoughts, behaviours and actions side of things, specifically because they don't have experience of it. They don't have the ability to see what's basically the right way from the wrong way, or should I say the evolutionary efficient way rather than the evolutionary inefficient way. And so this is what happens with them. They get interested and like to experience those things that are, if you like, they can only do with free will. And so they keep trying to test the water to see how far they can go with this and how far they can go with that. And that's what happens. They get addicted, and some of them do break free. And when they do break free of that addiction, the whole group benefits. So as with us, we're all evolving while we're here. So are they as well, and they're also enjoying their evolution as well. But they are finding it much harder because it's a bit like a child in a candy shop. You know, you can walk through a candy shop, or you can walk through a candy shop having stolen a few pieces of candy, and the temptation to steal the candy is overwhelming in this instance. Okay, so the second question is, and I think I've answered it actually in the first part of the Satsanga, in terms of the recognising how we can move down how we can stop ourselves moving down the frequencies. But I'll read the question out, and as I read the question out, I'll see if there's anything in there that allows me to add to that lecture, so to speak. So question 2 is, with regard to the topic this month, regarding recognising that we are slipping down the frequencies, and I'm hopeful you'll present a solid plan of how to avoid getting in the rut when this occurs, I'm also interested in the ways to work back up and out, and how we can move on with that. So we also have to look at what it feels like to move backwards in our evolutionary path. And although at some level all the evolutionary content is in fact a form of growth, positive or negative, is it still accruable content that shapes one's experiencing when one's experiencing it? If it can be argued that slipping down the frequencies at least is a form of growth in evolutionary contact, can I discuss this and how we might not get trapped into false senses? Would it be interesting to hear your thoughts? It would be interesting to hear your thoughts on how to recognise this in process and avoid it entirely, or minimising the deleterious impacts of spiralling down the frequencies which seem a necessity for the soul journey. which it seems to be at some level is part of the human experience. Okay. I think I've answered most of this in the first part of the Satsanga, but in essence, a solid plan is based upon really being hard on yourself, using the observer self, not being judgmental, but stopping yourself in tracks, stopping the addiction of changing the thoughts, behaviours and actions that are low frequency thoughts, behaviours and actions. Asking somebody else to be the observer self, somebody who loves you and that you're going to take notice of, is another way of doing this. So if you can't trust yourself using your observer self, use somebody else to be the observer self for you. It's probably not a good idea to use your partner or your husband or wife. It's probably somebody who you can classify as a friend. You may want to go to a spiritual counsellor, for instance, to be able to do this. But the thing is, a spiritual counsellor can't be with you all the time. So it's important to recognise that you can use partners, but it may be detrimental to the partnership, specifically if you're struggling to fight against those low frequency thought, behaviours and actions. So trying to find somebody who you're with all the time, other than your partner, or with on a regular basis, who is able to observe you in your thoughts, behaviours and actions. I mean, obviously the thoughts won't be picked up by them, but the intention behind the behaviours and actions will be classified as thoughts. So if you can't do it yourself with your observer self, use somebody else to be the observer for you. Basically, when you're working your way up again, you start to regain the functionality associated with higher frequency existence. So your intuition increases, your ability to be sentient into your clairsentience increases, your knowingness increases, your ability to communicate with other entities increases, and the ability to observe the rest of the environments in the frequencies above where we are now increases. So we start to be more connected. We start to experience more things. The human eye starts to be more capable than it is now. So there will be parts of it where you can start to see the overlay of the third eye on the physical eye vision. So we start to see things. If we've experienced these things before, when we move down the frequencies, we tend to sort of think we've dreamt them. We tend to think that it's something that's happened that we can't re-achieve. But we can re-achieve it. We have to continue to work on ourselves. We have to continue to recognise that we need to move onwards and upwards. And it's hard work. Okay. Let's have a look, see if we can find anything else. Yeah, and to be honest, actually some souls do put themselves in a position of an almost death spiral, so to speak, a spiral downwards that you can't stop, to see what they need to do to come out of it, and that in its own right is a way of accruing serious serious evolutionary progression. So it can be considered to be a reasonable thing to suggest, I'm talking in circles here, I know that even the experience of negativity or negative thoughts, behaviours and actions is an evolutionary level. The answer is yes, but we've already been there. We've experienced it here in previous lives. So all we're doing is going over old ground, and it's a bit like painting the wall twice. When you change the colour of a wall with paint, you change the colour of the wall. You experience the change the first time you've changed the colour. When you go over that wall again with the same colour, you don't get the same level of satisfaction associated with seeing the colour change. It's because you've done it once. All you're doing is making sure that you're not missing any part by going over again. You're giving it depth of colour. So although you might suggest or argue that there is a level of additional, shall I say, experience and therefore evolution associated with going deeper into something, in actual fact, we do go deeper into it, and we have gone deeper into it in most cases. But the downward spiral aspect, where we have to sort of put ourselves into a flat spin and try and get ourselves out of it, is quite a common life profile for people, and one where they put themselves in extreme situations to see if they can come out the other side. I'm just seeing if there's anything else here we can look at. I'm not suggesting anybody puts themselves into a downward spiral, by the way. It is difficult to get out of, and you've got to be an extremely resolute, robust and dedicated individual to stop the spin, to stop the downward descent, and create an upward ascent. It's very, very difficult. So the thing is, again, how to recognise it, it's all to do with using the observer self in a non-judgmental way. And if you have trouble with that, ask somebody that you know to work with you, to point out your failings. It will hurt for having these failings to be pointed out. It will definitely hurt, because none of us likes to be told off for a start off, and none of us likes to be told we're doing things wrong, or thinking in a different way, wrong way, or behaving in a wrong way. And so having somebody else do it rather than ourselves is a very, very harsh route. But if you feel you can't do the observer self, then using somebody else to be your observer for you and feeding back on the traits, the thoughts, behaviours and actions that you have, and how you've changed, is another way of doing it. For me, although it's harder, it's the surefire method, provided you're prepared to accept the information that comes through. Okay, I think we've got to as much as we can do in terms of this particular satsanga. I've got one more set of questions, but I think that I'm going to hold that to next satsanga, because it actually talks about the new earth in a certain way. It also talks about the way we are now, how people are becoming more impatient and things. So I'm going to hold that particular question, or two questions in abeyance, because I think it'll be good to link into it between this particular satsanga and the one in September. Okay, so what I'd like to try and do now is to work on a meditation that is connecting with your true energetic self. Okay, and I apologise for the gap in the recording. Some rates, I put it on pause, it seems to have come off pause, so I apologise for that. So this particular end of meet meditation is connecting with your true energetic self. So let's sit in the correct posture. Feet flat on the ground, back straight, in a straight backed chair with the palms uppermost on your thighs. And eyes closed and focused on the area of the third eye, which is in between the two eyebrows and above the bridge of the nose. And this is not so much a meditation, but more of a technique in actual fact. Okay. So I want you to recognise that your sentience, that bit of you that thinks, considers itself to be in the head. and it considers itself to be in the head because we speak in the head, and we see in the head, and we hear in the head. So everything tells us that our sentience, our thinking is in the head. We associate where we are as being in our head. Okay. So the idea now is to move our sentience away from the head. So just withdraw everything that you have. Every connection with your body. So if you can feel your fingers, think of your fingers, or the energy associated with your fingers retracting back up the fingers to the palms, from the palms to the wrists, from the wrists to the elbows, from the elbows to the shoulders, from the shoulders to the shoulder girdle. Okay, let the energy stay there. And from the feet, let the energy that's in your legs, your lower body and your legs, move up, away from the toes, up to the balls of the feet, to the instep, to the ankle. The energy comes up the calf to the knee, to the thigh, to the pelvis, and then comes up and stops just above the pelvis. Now let's move the energy that is ourselves. Let's move the energy that's ourselves out of our head, down through our neck, down to the shoulder girdle. Let the energy that was in the arms connect with the energy that's in our head. So we now feel as if we're in our shoulder girdle. Then we come down our spine until we meet the energy that is the toes, the feet, the ankles, the calves, the knees, the thighs and the pelvis. Okay, we've left the Tantien, by the way, is the distribution point for the energies, and the soul seat is the location of our sentience in reality, not the head. But I've not mentioned the soul seat, which sits just behind the front aspect, or where the front aspect of the heart chakra joins the body, which is the sternum, because I want to make sure that stays there. But we can still project ourselves into our true energetic self by leaving a part of ourselves there. This is ensuring that we still connect with our body. So the Tantien is where all the energy distributes around the body. So when we move the energy and the sentience from the head and the arms and the fingers and the hands and the toes and the legs to the Tantien, we're bringing everything back to the distribution point. And now I want you to visualize that the Tantien is connected to the Hara line. The Hara line is a small little energetic tube that allows the energy that's associated with the soul, or the aspect of a much bigger part of ourselves, what's called the true energetic self, to remain in contact with the true energetic self, whilst the smaller part of that sentience, the soul or the aspect, is projected into the human form. So move up this tube. So you're moving out of the Tantien now, where everything has coalesced, up this tube, which goes up the body, through the centre of the body, not the spine, and although location-wise it comes out through the head close to the crown chakra, it's not actually part of the function of the crown chakra. You move up and up and up, till you can perceive a much larger ball of energy, if you want to call it that. That ball of energy is our true energetic self, our Godhead, our Oversoul, or our higher self, whichever you want to call it. It all means the same thing. The sentience moves up this tube, this hara line, getting higher and higher and higher, until the tube connects with this sphere, and we move into the energy that is the sphere. This sentient energy, this much larger part of ourselves which remains disincarnate. This is our Godhead, our Oversoul, our higher self, our true energetically sentient, if you want to call it that, but true energetic self. Allow yourself to expand into this energy. Communicate in whichever way you wish. With this energy. Feel yourself being in all places, in all parts of this large sphere at once. Try to disassociate yourself from being in a single point of focus, but you are in a diffuse level of focus, so to speak. Feel yourself spreading, being everywhere and nowhere at once. In this state of expansion, you can communicate with the rest of you, because you are in what you are. This is you. It's not some bigger part of you, it's you. Although quite clearly it is a bigger part from the perspective of the smaller aspect of the true energetic self, which is projected into the physical form to experience, learn and evolve through low frequency interaction. In essence, that smaller part is the bigger part, the finger in the bucket of water. So when you're in this state of expansion, feel how it feels. It's blissful, it's calm, it's cuddly, it's delightful. It's warm, it's all consuming. You'll find that when you ask a question, it's answered instantaneously. As you're about to answer your question, you'll know the answer. Allow yourself to drift within this large body of energy. If you wish, you can experiment. Experiment with yourself being diffuse or focused, or being spread in different parts. 10% here, 20% there, 40% here, 30% there. Or just 10%, 10 times 10%. Imagine that there's 10 parts of you which are equals 10% of your sentience. But each of them is identified and individualized as being you. So at this point you can communicate properly with your true energetic self. But the communication is not just thoughts, it's knowingness, it's emotions, it's beingness, it's ideas, concepts, visions, hearing things. For the purpose of this meditation, we'll start to think about coming back now, but you can spend as long as you like being in communion with your true energetic self, asking it questions, solving problems, giving you states of feeling that you know that you are being protected and being looked after. So to come back, all we do is reverse the process. So coalesce all the sentience that is you within this sphere of sentient energy into one point. That energy comes now down back into the edge of this sphere where the Hara line is, and move down through the Hara line. You get the feeling of being squeezed into a small tunnel. When you leave the body going towards your true energetic self, you may feel as if you're being squeezed through a tunnel into the light, very similar to a near-death experience. Move back down this Hara line, going through the location of the crown chakra, down through the body to the point of distribution, which is the Tantien. And then allow your sentience to rise up to its normal location where you consider it to be, which is in the head, and allow the rest of the energy to dissipate itself so that you can animate your body. So the energies that were going down towards the feet project that energy back from the Tantien, going down through the pelvis, down through the thighs to the knees, through the calves, through the ankles, the heel, the instep, ball of the foot, and then the toes. So you can start to feel your legs again now. And the rest of the energy goes up towards the shoulder girdle, goes out of the shoulders to the upper arms, then the elbows, then the forearms, then the wrists, then the palms, and then the fingers. So you can feel all your body again. And when you're ready, you can slowly come back into the room. It's quite common to be very tearful. Same for if you're connected with Source. And take a drink of water to help to ground you, so to speak. But don't forget, you'll be a higher frequency now than you were when you started. Okay, so that's the end of this pre-recorded Satsanga. The second pre-recorded Satsanga that's been created in conjunction with Kevin Moore of The Moore Show, and this will also go onto his website, or should I say his YouTube channel as well. So thank you very much for dialing into this recording and going through this exercise and listening to the questions and the answers to the questions and the lecture about how to recognise we're slipping down the frequencies and how to move forwards with that. Okay, so God's love to you all, and I look forward to projecting and receiving energy from you all in September with the third of the pre-recorded Satsangas that are done in conjunction with Kevin Moore. So good morning, good night, good afternoon, and God's love to you all, and look after yourselves. And remember, keep thinking high frequency thoughts, behaviours and actions, and use your observer self. Namaste to you all.
Did you see the aliens in Crete?